If you and/or a loved one in your life could use some coffee gifts, ideas, or perhaps some additions or upgrades to your kitchen or your coffee routine, in this video I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite tools for making the perfect cup of coffee, and it might be a lot less than you think. Plus, you'll also discover 5 of my favorite tips that you can use starting today, and perhaps that next coffee experience of yours will be something to remember for years and years to come. Konnichiwa. If we haven't met before, my name is Pat Tokuyama, founder of the Japanese Cooking Club, as well as All Day I Eat Like a Shark, this YouTube channel where I help people learn how to make plant-based Japanese food. If you're interested in learning more, check out my cookbook linked in the description below, or the Japanese Cooking Club, and see if that's something that you'd be interested in learning about. So as you may know, I've been roasting coffee for just about 7 years now, and as much as I would love to say that I know everything, I admit that I do not. But what I will share with you in this video is everything that I have learned up until this point that I know will benefit you, especially if you're starting out, or any of the loved ones in your life who enjoy drinking coffee. If you've got anything useful to add, maybe we can learn from each other if you leave it in the comments below, especially if there's something that I missed. So I think my coffee journey started when I was in high school. I had to commute to South Orange County when I lived in North Orange County, which was a little bit of a drive. And in order to help me get to school safely and be awake in the morning, early in the morning, I started to drink coffee. So I started with the powdered kind, easy and simple, straightforward, had a lot of sugar, different flavors. I like to rotate between hazelnut and vanilla and other different flavors. But as I grew older and I moved off to college, I actually sort of evolved or upgraded and got a drip coffee machine. That's when I got into Starbucks, Peet's, as well as the coffee bean, so darker roasts, which is what those brands are known for primarily. And then ultimately, when I moved to San Francisco, I discovered third wave coffee. So if you haven't heard of the 3 waves of coffee, basically the first wave of coffee hit the United States in the 60s when it became more widely available than it was previously. As you know, the United States does not produce its own coffee. It's always imported from coffee growing regions. So in the 60s, this became more available, more common, and more popular. So that was the first wave. The second wave has to do with Peet's, Starbucks, and those types of coffee shops making coffee more popular, so more consistent, darker roasts. And then the third wave happens to be kind of what we are in right now, where coffee is generally higher quality. The roasts are a little bit on the lighter side, so you can actually taste the difference between different beans, single origin beans. And overall, the quality is much better. So that's kind of the wave that we are at right now. That's kind of the type of coffee that I actually roast and enjoy. Because you can actually taste a lot of the different characteristics and nuances from different coffee producing regions, which is pretty fun. Wherever you are in your coffee journey, let's start and talk about some of the things that you need to brew the perfect cup at home. Starting with the brewing method. 3 of my favorites. We're going to be starting with drip coffee. So I have my Technivorm machine back here. This is my primary coffee machine. I use it every weekday. So Monday through Friday is usually when I'm using it, and it's very convenient. All I got to do is grind the coffee, add in the grinds, add in some water, hit the switch, and then in a few minutes my coffee will be ready. The reason why I chose the Technivorm is because that actually used to be one of the only SCAA certified coffee machines. So SCAA is the Specialty Coffee Association of America. Basically, they ensure that the brewing temperature is where it's supposed to be, around 200 degrees Fahrenheit, plus or minus a few degrees, which makes a difference in terms of the extraction rate and the efficiency with which it's going to extract all of the goodness out of the coffee grounds. The Technivorm I've had for over 5 years now. It's served me well. Would highly recommend it. Would buy it again in a heartbeat. I'll link the SCA document in the description below if you want to check out some of their other materials. My second most favorite way to brew coffee is with the French press. So this is what I have here. This is a Freeling French press, and it's made of stainless steel. You can also use this for tea. You can also use this for not only hot coffee, hot French press, but you can also do a cold brew. So if you don't want to have too many kitchen gadgets or whatever, including a teapot, you could probably get away with just a French press to brew both your coffee and your tea hot or cold. It's stainless steel. It also has a very fine filter. So if you tend to have a grinder or you make your grind a little bit too fine, it's going to help to eliminate some of those fines from pouring into your cup. And it's very easy to clean, and it's stainless steel, so it's durable. It's not going to affect the flavor of your coffee. So the reason why I enjoy the French press is because the flavor and the texture of the coffee, also known as the body, is going to be a little bit thicker, more richer. It's going to be more oily, more dense, and it's going to give you a different mouthfeel. So the feeling that you get in your mouth when you're drinking the coffee, as compared to something like a drip coffee or a pour over coffee. When you're making coffee with those two methods, the paper filter that you're using tends to trap some of those oils and some of those compounds in the paper, so they never get through into your final cup. But the French press, being more porous, allows all those things to go into your cup, all those goodies, and it results in a different flavor and texture. And then my third favorite, which is going to be espresso, and they're all going to taste slightly different. Perhaps if you've tried that before with the same coffee bean, the same roast level, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, maybe now would be a good time to consider giving it a try. And you can even use this to rehydrate dried mushrooms. No, not the magical kind, but the kind that I use to make shiitake dashi for my Japanese cooking. Have you tried using your French press for something like that? Let me know in the comments below. So if you're wondering what I have here, what I've been holding this whole time, this is my portafilter. It's a bottomless portafilter. It's actually a double shot. So this holds 2 shots, about 28 grams of espresso grinds. The reason why I got a bottomless, so the bottomless means that it doesn't have a spout here, is when you're actually brewing the espresso, you can actually see how well you did in terms of preparing the coffee puck, because it'll evenly, gradually drip out into the center. If, for example, you did not tamp down your coffee grinds correctly, if it was uneven, or something else was wrong, it might spray all over the place and make a mess on your counter or your espresso machine, showing you that you messed up. If you're a total beginner to espresso, if you're totally new to espresso, you've never really had experience making it using a portafilter, you could get a bottomless one like this. That way you can practice and you can see visually if you are doing it correctly or not. So we kind of jumped the gun there, but espresso is my third favorite way to enjoy coffee. The primary reason being that it's super intense, and I do occasionally like my milk drinks, not lattes as much as I used to, more so like macchiatos and cappuccinos, which use a lot less milk. Most of the time, a straight double or triple shot of espresso to pick me up in the afternoon. It may make my stomach hurt a little bit, especially if I'm drinking on an empty stomach, just straight espresso. It can be pretty harsh, which is one of the reasons why you might want to have some food or put some milk in there, or non-dairy milk to soften it up a little bit. So I have a Rancilio Silvia machine. I've had it almost 6 years now, I would say. I got a PID on there, which is a device that helps to regulate the temperature so you can get a more accurate brew, as opposed to not having one, not knowing what the temperature is at the brew head. And it's a single boiler machine, which is fine for my purposes. If I was going to be making a lot of milk drinks, for example, like lattes, cappuccinos, etc., then you might want to consider getting something like a double boiler, which has one boiler specifically for steaming the milk and a boiler dedicated to just brewing the espresso. But overall, very happy with it. It's a good starter machine. And I especially love the coffee because there isn't so much liquid. You're not going to be having to go shikko to the bathroom every 20 minutes because there's a lot less liquid. The potency is much higher. The flavor is going to be much more pronounced, much more bold, much more in your face if you're into that. But you can always dilute it with a little bit of ice, a little bit of water, if you want a little bit less of a strong in-your-face flavor. So now that we've covered 3 of my favorite brewing methods, 3 very different brewing methods for coffee, the 4th thing that is going to be important to consider getting if you don't have one already is a proper coffee grinder. So I have a Capriso coffee grinder right there. It is a burr grinder, a stepless, so you can actually rotate the grinding mechanism to different levels of coarseness When you're doing a French press, you want a coarser grind as compared to something like a drip coffee where you want a finer grind. And the worst thing that you could use for grinding your coffee is one of those blade grinders, those blades that just chop everything up into little bits, because when it does that, the pieces of coffee that it chops up into little bits are all going to be different sizes, and that's going to cause you to extract each of those different grinds of coffee that are different sizes at different rates. So you're going to get some pieces that are going to be under extracted, some pieces that are going to be over extracted, which is why it's not recommended. Also, regarding the grinder, another thing that you should consider doing if you're not doing already is to grind your coffee just before you brew it, because as you know, when you grind coffee, it's very aromatic, it smells amazing. If you can imagine, once you grind it, all of those aromatic compounds, those flavors are getting released into the air or degrading or oxidizing because they're exposed to the air, and that's not a good thing. So for the ultimate flavor, the ultimate coffee experience, you should grind your coffee just before you're about to drink it. The fifth thing that you're going to want to consider getting, especially if you're going to be doing French press or pour overs, is something like this, the Zojirushi electric hot water pot. I did a review. If you want to see that review, check out the link in the description. But basically I use this all the time, every day, for either coffee and or tea. And it's very convenient to have hot water on demand, not having to fuss around with the stove, measure the temperature or anything like that, because it has preset temperatures which it keeps the water at for your use whenever you want. So the next three things are going to be important if you are very particular about your coffee. If you're going to be doing a pour over, for example, you might want to use a scale. One, so you know how much coffee that you're using. Two, so you know how much water you're using. Plus a thermometer, plus or minus a thermometer if you need to measure the temperature. If you don't have one of these electric water pots, for example, that's going to help to give you precision if that is something that you're after. If you are interested in being precise with your coffee, it's totally cool. Make sure to check out the SCAA guide on the golden cup, the perfect cup, or the golden cup of coffee. I'll link that in the description below. All right, so that was the scale, the thermometer, and the Pyrex. Pyrex for measuring water if you don't want to weigh it. Next is going to be storage. Storage is very important for keeping your coffee fresh, especially if you have fresh coffee. And that's what I have here. These are my AirScape containers. Basically, they are stainless containers with a one-way valve, so they'll let gas go out but not gas go in. And the reason that that's important is because when coffee is roasted, it has CO2 that is gradually emitted from the coffee beans, and once you have a one-way valve, it's going to allow it to go out, and you don't want oxygen going in because that's going to cause your coffee to go stale. That's why I have a bunch of these, is for when I roast my different coffees. Usually I do 3 at a time, so I can rotate different coffee beans throughout the week and always enjoy something new and fresh. The darker the roast, the quicker your coffees will go rancid because of all the oils, which tend to oxidize much quicker. Some people may like that rancidity flavor. It's kind of a hallmark flavor for Starbucks, Peet's, and Coffee Bean, those dark French roasts. But if you aren't into that too much, that's something to consider as well. And then if you're wondering what I have here, this is my Hario hand grinder. This is a manual grinder for coffee. So this is a 2-cup capacity, and all you do when you're ready to grind your beans is to put them in here on top, and then you just rotate this. But you do that a bunch of times. It's a lot more work than it looks, and you'll have freshly ground coffee. You can actually adjust the coarseness using the little, I don't know what you call it, triangle looking thing. And I primarily use this with my French press when I'm traveling. So if I'm camping or going somewhere where I know I'll have access to hot water, but not good coffee, this is what I'll take: my hand grinder, my freshly roasted beans, and my French press. And for somebody who's really serious or who is curious about roasting their own coffee, there's several different tools that you can start with that I have used personally. First is the Fresh Roast 500. That was the first coffee roaster that I bought when I first started roasting coffee. It's basically a small cylindrical device, and you put about 1/4 of a pound of green coffee in there. You let it blow hot air all over it, and about 8 to 10, maybe 12 minutes, you'll have freshly roasted coffee. The next step up is going to be a Hot Top or a Barrymore. Those are 2 of the similar sized coffee roasters that are a little bit bigger in capacity. They can do about 1/2 pound each. I used to have the hot top. I used that for about 2 to 3 years. It is a half-pound capacity roaster, so even though you can do less than a half pound, a half pound is probably about where you want to do your roasts, because that's what it was designed to do, frankly. So the next step up is going to be a 1 kilo or a 2 pound roaster, or a 1 pound roaster if you can find one. That's going to be, for me, the Ilia Bullet, which I've had for a couple years now, ever since it came out. And it's one of my favorite tools to use, my only tool to use for roasting coffee. And you can do up to 2 pounds is the max. And for me, that saves me a lot of time. Every 1 to 2 pounds can take anywhere from maybe like 10 to 14 minutes, depending on how dark you roast it. So that adds up if you're doing several batches. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to upgrade from the small fresh roast to the hot top and then to the Ilia Bullet, which I have right now, is for efficiency and different roasting abilities. So the other thing that I forgot to mention is that the hot top and the bullet are both drum roasters. So that's going to result in a more of a different flavor, less of a bright flavor. I'll link both of those products, or actually all 3 of the products, in the description below if you're interested in learning more. And as you might imagine, one of the reasons why I decided to roast my own coffee is because 1, I enjoy the flavor, 2, I enjoy the experience, 3, I enjoy the manual process, being able to use my hands to make something delicious. And then 4 is that it actually saves money. So you know, coffee tends to be somewhat expensive, especially if you're going to a specialty coffee shop. Usually it's around $16 to $20 for 3/4 of a pound. So 1 bag is usually 3/4 of a pound. But if you roast it at home, you can cut that into half, even less than half of that price for the same amount of coffee. So now that we've talked about some of my favorite tools for enjoying coffee in terms of brewing it, storage, and then also roasting it, we're going to talk about 5 of my tips for you to enjoy your coffee and take that next cup of yours to the next level. First thing, the easiest thing that you could do right now, starting today if you have coffee at home, as soon as you get the bag, a new bag, say you bought it, is to open it up and to smell it. Smell the bag, smell the coffee, see how it tastes. And also, as soon as you finish grinding it, smell those grinds as well. Then as you're brewing it, especially if you're doing a pour over or if you're doing a drip coffee or even espresso, you can actually smell it while it's brewing and then smell it again in your cup. So there's 4 opportunities for you to smell your coffee in the different states that it was in. And if you roasted it, you would even have a 5th or a 6th opportunity, 1 as a green coffee and then during the roasting process, and then 3, I guess, once it's done. So many opportunities there to smell as well. The second thing that you want to do to take your next coffee experience up a notch is to get freshly roasted coffee. If you can get coffee from a local coffee roaster who has roasted the coffee within a few days, ideally maybe a week, then you'll notice that the flavor is going to be a little bit stronger, a little bit more nuanced. If you're able to taste the different notes of single origin coffee, so coffee that was produced from one country, not a mix or a blend of coffee, that might be something that you are going to enjoy. And it'll give you a different perspective. It'll give you an opportunity perhaps to experience something different that you never had experienced before or never knew that was there to experience. And you might find something that you like. So the third easy thing that you can do to take your coffee experience to the next level is to enjoy different brewing methods. So I highlighted 3 of my favorites: the drip coffee, the espresso, using it as espresso, and then also as French press. So as you may know, there's many other different ways that you can actually brew coffee. So whatever it is that you have not tried yet, maybe that is something that you could put on your to-do list, and it'll be a new way for you to enjoy the same coffee experience, but differently. The 4th simple thing that you could do to enjoy coffee is to try cold brew. If you have not tried cold brew before, you may be missing out, in particular if you are sensitive to the acidic flavors or the harsh flavors of coffee. Usually when you do a true cold brew, meaning that you have extracted the coffee in room temperature or cold water, then it's going to taste much more mellow, much more subdued, and less acidic. So those are going to be preferable things for some people. Other people may not like that, but if you've never tried a true cold brew before, that's also something that you should try. And no, brewing hot coffee and then putting it in the refrigerator or over ice is not the same. And then the fifth simple thing that you could do is to try different coffees from different countries. So in general, the Central American coffees are going to taste a little bit different from the South American coffees, which are going to taste a little bit different from the Indonesian coffees. Whatever you are able to try will help to develop your palate, your perspectives, and it'll ultimately help you discover what it is that you truly like in coffee, the flavor, the aroma, the texture, and the overall experience. One of the things that I learned while going to a coffee conference, I think it's called CoffeeCon in Los Angeles a few years ago, during one of the seminars, they talked about how the longer that you drink coffee, especially if you're a roaster, the more acidic of a coffee that you like. So acidic it sounds like it's a negative term, but in fact, when it comes to describing a coffee and its flavors, it's actually a good thing. So acidic flavors are usually, you might associate with like a lemon, maybe a tomato, something like that. But acidity is a little bit different. It's not necessarily those types of flavors. And if you can look at the flavor wheel of coffee, where it describes all of the different flavors with which you can describe coffee, you'll get a good idea of what types of coffees have what types of flavors, and what types of flavors you might enjoy or want to try because you've never experienced them before. You could try the same bean at a light roast, a medium roast, and a dark roast, and that's going to bring out, all of those different roast levels are going to bring out different flavor characteristics of the bean. So you might be surprised, it might taste like a totally different coffee when it's roasted very light as compared to when it's roasted very dark. So now you've got some great tips that you can start practicing today using what it is that you have at your disposal, plus over 9 different coffee gift ideas for either yourself or the coffee lover in your life if you're looking for something to give them maybe this holiday season or for their birthday or any other special occasion. Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments if I did. And I'm curious, what is your favorite brewing method? Do you prefer drip? Do you prefer pour over? Do you prefer siphon coffee? Do you prefer Turkish coffee? Do you prefer cold brew? And I think next time we'll be talking about something like maybe tea. Tea or coffee? Do you have a preference? Why not both? I know for me, it is both. If you drop it from somewhere up high, which I don't know why that would happen, but you never know. Maybe you're rock climbing or something, for example.